calling this meeting to order. And we're going to start off with our community application workshop. So we have a presentation. Emma's going to lead us in our presentation. So get started whenever you're ready, please.
Will do. So yeah, thank you all. I'm just going to be running through the project eligibility application. That way you can see the status of it, and anyone watching or watching this in the future will be able to see step by step how to go through the application. Okay. So to start, you can head over to the town website. And from here, you can find the Community Preservation Committee webpage. And then once you're here, you're going to want to go to Forms and Documents. And then the first thing you'll see on this webpage is this big button talking about the online application being live. So we'll click on that. Hopefully my internet is not this slow the whole night, but we'll see. And then from here, it's going to take you to the Planning and Economic Development OpenGov page. So this is where you'll see all of the different forms that you can submit for the Planning and Economic Development department. But we're going to scroll down to the Community Preservation Committee eligibility application. And we'll hit Apply Online. Okay, and now this is when you'll be prompted to log in. I'm already logged in right now, so you can see it has my name up here in the corner. But if not, you'll just be prompted to make an OpenGov account. So you'll use your email, your preferred email, and then create a password. And the first step of the application is just confirming your contact information. If you've already completed an OpenGov application before, so if you've applied for a compost bin or some other application online through the town of Shrewsbury, then this might auto-populate, but you can just go through and check to make sure all the information is correct. So that all looks good. It will probably have your address here, or you can enter it if it doesn't. And then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so here is where you're going to choose the location of the project that you're applying for. So tonight I'm going to be using a sample project that the committee will hopefully eventually see, but for the purposes of tonight, don't pay attention to the details that I'm using. They're all made up, or most of them. So we're gonna use 150 Maple Avenue. And if you've used OpenGov before, you know that what's great about this is it will just auto-populate the property owner information, and you can double check all of this information, the zip code. And then once that looks good, you'll go on to the next step. Okay, so here you're going to just put in a little bit more information about your project. So the first thing is the name of your project. So tonight, we're going to be using Maple Ave Recreation Area, Stonewall, and Pocket Park is the name of the project. And we're going to say, yes, we do have a co-sponsor. And once you hit yes, you'll see that a few more questions pop up about the co-sponsor. If you don't have a co-sponsor, you would just hit no and move on to the next question. But we'll say yes for now. And we are going to say the Recreation Department, and co-sponsor names. We're gonna put Laurel and Kevin in there. Okay. And then you'll also be prompted if there's any other information you want to add in about partners on the project that you're going to be applying for. You can do that as well. And then this is just a yes/no question if you've contacted the Planning and Economic Development Department, which we always recommend you do before submitting an application so that we can give you some tips and help connect you to the right people if you're looking for co-sponsors or partners. And we'll go on to step 4. All right, so in this step, you're going to choose one of the 4 different categories of projects that the CPC gets, which is open space, recreation, historic preservation, and community housing. If you're interested in learning more about those categories and determining what area your project would fall into, this is a hyperlink right here to the community preservation plan. So if I click on that, you'll see in the plan that there are some very detailed sections about each category. So for example, if you wanted to learn more about community housing, you can go here and you can read more about that. And that can help you determine what category your project will be. But for now, we'll jump back to the application. This is going to be a recreation project. Okay, and now step 5, this is where you're going to determine what type of project it's going to be. So there's a few different options, and I also will say that this drop-down menu that has type is dependent on what you pick in the category section. So for example, if you picked community housing and then went to type, you can see that the rehabilitate and restore has a little addition there that says only if acquired or created with CPC funds. So very helpful, makes it a little less confusing. So yeah, we'll choose recreation for now. And if you're curious in learning more and helping to determine what area your project is, there's another hyperlink here, which I will show you. It goes to a really handy graphic. So this is helpful to see what type of projects are allowable with CPC funds. So you can check that out. And again, if you ever have any questions or you're unsure what area your project falls in, you can always contact the Planning and Economic Development Department. But we'll jump back to the application. And for this one, we're going to say, rehabilitate, restore. Okay, step 6. Please give a description of your project. So I have a little something written up that I'll add in there. Okay. So this can be as brief or descriptive as you want it to be. As the application process goes along and your application goes before the committee, there'll be time to get more details about the project. So it's okay if it's not a super in-depth description at this point in the application. And the next question is, which town meeting do you want to be considered for, annual or special? And there's also an option for unsure. So we'll say annual for this one. And here's also a hyperlink to the town meeting webpage on the Town of Shrewsbury website. So if you want some more information about what town meetings are and how they work, you can click on that. And then this last question says, are you ready to complete and submit a funding application at this time? It is not required to submit both an eligibility and funding application at the same time. However, some applicants are ready to submit both. So if you are, you can hit yes, or you can hit no, not yet. So if I hit no, not yet, that's going to bring me to step 7, which is an attachment template. So this is the co-sponsor consent form. So earlier in that application, when it asked if you had a co-sponsor, you would be required to fill out this form. Which is what step 8 is, actually uploading that form. If you chose, or if you didn't specify that you had a co-sponsor at the beginning of the application, then you will not be prompted to submit a co-sponsor consent form. However, if I go back 2 steps and I hit yes, I'll show you what that looks like if you are ready to submit a funding application at this time. But before I go any further, I want to ask the committee if there's any questions before I keep going.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, perfect.
Good job, thank you.
Of course. So I'll very quickly run through what the funding application looks like. So again, this is what it looks like when you're submitting both at the same time. But if you're submitting the funding application later, it will be the exact same questions, just a separate application. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, the first question is about your project purpose and goals. So this question asks you to reflect on the priorities outlined in the community preservation plan, and specifically the fiscal year goals of the CPC, the heat map, and then also the plan's topic sections, which are those sections we talked about based on the category of project that you're doing, open space, recreation, etc. And the community preservation plan is linked here again. So if you need to refresh yourself and go look at any of those goals or details, you can open it from here. I'm gonna paste in what we have for this project. Okay. And then we'll go to the next step. So this next step asks applicants to describe your project budget. Please indicate other funding sources or opportunities. And you'll also notice that at the bottom of this question, there's a collection of potential non-CPA funding sources. And then also the question asks you to indicate if you have pursued any outside funding sources that are not CPA, and whether or not they've been successful. So I'm going to open this spreadsheet just to show you what it looks like. So these other potential funding sources are broken down by project category. So you'll notice that there's open space, and it's also broken down by what type of funding it is. So yeah, recreation, community housing, and historic preservation are here as well. So as you're applying, feel free to look through this spreadsheet and see if there's anything that could potentially fit what your project is doing, and would make a good fit for funding, or additional funding. Okay, hopping back to the application, I'm gonna add in this answer. Okay. And again, this doesn't have to be like super in-depth. There will definitely be times that, you know, the committee will ask for, will ask any questions they have if they do have any questions about budget. But this just gives an overview of what the ideal budget for the project looks like. Okay, next step is implementation. And in this step, you're going to identify the project manager, which will be the main point of contact for the project, and also include a description of their experience and ability to see the project through to completion. And as well, you identify any other project partners that you have and what their responsibilities would be for the project. So in our case, I have Kevin and Laurel as our project managers. Okay. Oh, and Griffin, I added you in here too. All right, next up, timeline. So this, again, does not have to be nailed down specifically, but just to give a rough idea of what the schedule of the project will be. So this would include elements of construction, as well as the timing of other expenditures. And we always recommend a quarterly schedule for CPC projects, because that's normally when project managers are asked for updates about their project is on a quarterly basis, so that's why we recommend that schedule. And I'll also note, might be useful to know for anyone applying, typical CPA grants are 2 years in length, and then you can ask for extensions, but typically that's the timeline of the grant rather. Okay, next is maintenance. So again, pretty self-explanatory. But if there's any maintenance that will be required of your project, this is just asking who is responsible for it and how it will be funded. Okay, next we have external approvals. So this is where you would talk about if there's any permits or approvals that are needed for the project to go forward. And again, the Planning and Economic Development Department could help you determine if there would be any needed. So we're always a resource for that. And then the next section just asks you to note if any of the following boards or committees have endorsed your project. And then we also have a question here about if there's anything else that you would like to share about the project. There's a box to do that as well. Right. All right, and then the last few steps are similar to what was at the end of the eligibility application. And because we're submitting both the eligibility and funding applications at the same time, we have both the co-sponsor consent form and the project budget form here. If you need the templates for those, these are clickable links. You can click those, they will open up, you can fill them out. And then on the next page, it will ask you to upload those. So as you can see, only the co-sponsor form is required because we said we had a co-sponsor. And then the project budget form is required for all CPC projects. And you'll notice that there's also some other optional files here as well to upload. So this really depends on the project, on who's applying for the project and what the project work entails. But there's letters of support, some other useful documentation. And if there's ever an instance where someone submits a project and then later we realize we need one of these, you can go back into the application and submit those if needed. I'm just going to upload these so that we can get to the end. This is the last step. All right, we'll hit next. And then you'll also have an opportunity here to just look through what you've done before you officially submit it. So once everything looks good, you'll hit confirm and submit. Perfect, and it's all submitted. So once you submit an application, you'll be hearing probably from myself or maybe Griffin, someone in the Planning and Economic Development Department, and we'll get back to you with any other information we may need from you before we bring it to the committee.